Hi everyone. I want to take this opportunity to speak to you about the tragic death, the killing of George Floyd, and the dark days that have followed since, as once again the ongoing and deep-rooted structural racism, the injustice and inequality that plague our society have been highlighted. I believe that we, both as individuals and standing together as Oasis, can have a really important role to play in coming days. But that in order to do that, first we have to acknowledge again that racism is not a uniquely American problem. Instead, as we all know, it's a huge issue in our society as well. Not just historically, though the legacy of the British Empire and colonialism, the slave trade and Windrush have left their deep scars, but because still today, for instance, just for instance, black people in Britain are disproportionately stopped and searched and overrepresented in the prison system. Whilst African, Caribbean and Asian, black and brown heritage people are more likely to die of COVID-19 in the current crisis. So this moment calls for us to speak up and to speak out about all that keeps its knee on the neck of black people, either through overt prejudice or casual indifference here in the UK as well as elsewhere around the world. And this responsibility sits, of course, at the very core of who we are. The Oasis Circle of Inclusion is our badge, a badge that commits us to equality, to justice and to the inclusion of all, as well as to working constantly to do better, to do more, to break the cycle of racial prejudice, the cycle of social and institutional inequality. All this has to start by ensuring that every Oasis space, our schools and housing projects, our churches and children's centres, our youth and community projects are safe for all, for every young person, student or resident, for every staff member, volunteer or service user. That means that we have to ensure that we create room for open and honest conversation, room to listen, room to hear one another, especially to hear from those of us of black, Asian and minority heritage. Room to learn from each other's experiences, feelings, anger, frustration. Room to take on board each other's suggestions about how we can individually and collectively work to lead the change that we would like to see in our society. For instance, in our schools, as long as we teach a white colonial version of history, of literature or of art, are we simply setting up future generations to perpetuate the same racism on which we long to turn our backs? And in our hubs, how will we find, recruit and train more African, Caribbean and Asian leaders? We can't play our role in de-escalating tension unless we do our bit to dismantle the systems that created and sustain it. So our task must be to work with all our energy, and we have loads of it, to build a culture where no one is discriminated against or disadvantaged because of the colour of their skin, their ethnicity, their nationality, their religion, their sexuality or their gender. You don't have to be black to call out racism, but perhaps you have to be complicit or a coward not to. It strikes me that racism thrives best in the company of silence. But I believe that together we, Oasis, driven by our commitment to radical inclusion and our relentless quest for equality, have the platform and the power to help bring change. The only question that remains is this: What will we do with it?